So what I wanted to do is to kind of give a little history first behind the types and range of consular services that have been provided all over the world by the U.S. consulates that are part of the Department of State. Then we'll go to what we're going to talk about, and then we'll dwell into pre-stamp or 19th century consular services and documents because the services have been provided long before they issued special stamps in 1906. And we will show some examples of the stamps and their usages as well as use of the consular stamps on different type of service documents. And then lastly, we will show how some of the services were combined with the services of the host country officials, creating a combination of rankings. So, as I mentioned, they provided a wide range of services for US citizens and foreign citizens or businesses beyond their diplomatic role. Uh, Initially, the service was basically limited to issuing US passports and providing visa for foreign visitors until about 1823. And there are some collectors who collect those kind of documents, including me. But the relevance of this is that before 1810, U.S. consuls that were appointed by the President of the United States, they were unpaid positions. They were not compensated. And the reason is because most of those appointments and positions were at significant ports overseas that involved a lot of trading and shipping. So, in lieu of not paying them any compensation, they were given the privilege to do their own business, whether it be exporting, importing, acting as a forwarding agent, so forth. And even the practice of, shall we say, of seeking favors and getting favors from the US president is not new because it really went back shortly after independence when some people found out that it was very lucrative to be appointed as U.S. consuls in major ports because you make a ton of money. Anyway, so that kind of gives you some reference point of what we see even now. However, starting in about 1823, there was a congressional act that required U.S. consuls to certify export invoices of exports from foreign ports to U.S. to facilitate U.S. customs to levy duties. But at that time, that was given as a free service at no charge. Come about 10 years afterwards, Secretary of State Livingston did set a schedule of fees to be collected for such services. And again, most of that had to do with certification of export and exchange rates. In 1896, the range of services began to increase and went all the way up to over 100 services by 1896. And then, June 1, 1906, there was a congressional legislation that required and directed Department of State to issue and use special consular stamps to collect these fees and affix those stamps on the documents. That continued until 1944. And the denominations of issues were as little as 25 cents to $20 from Bureau of Engraving and Printing. So what we're going to do is cover the major services. As we mentioned, passports and visas were one. Export certification, we have talked about it. There also were a significant amount of services related to providing legal, testimonial, deposition, and translation services. There were other services such as notarizing documents or even consular courts. U.S. consuls were unique in some cities where they were given the authority to hold judicial courts involving U.S. citizens, claims or disputes overseas. And then the other important role was that in 1890s, there was a creation of a U.S. Port facility and health service inspection for inspecting ships and foreign ports to monitor any disease or infections that could be, coming to U.S. And the last will be more documents or services related to life events such as marriages, deaths, wills, and so forth. This is the earliest service document I have, and it was done in 1824, a year after the Congress required them to provide export certification services. This particular document originated from U.S. Consul Mr. Odin at San Salvador in El Salvador. Any of you who collect Latin America, that is a pretty early document from Salvador. And this document basically certified goods for export to U.S. with the U.S. consular seal, which is a white on the lower left. And as mentioned earlier, it was provided free and no fees were charged. But this is the earliest consular document I have. The second one is issued in 1843, and it was from Venezuela, Piotr Cabello. U.S. consul who issued this certificate was Litchfield. Notice how elaborate and beautiful pre-printed this service document is. And this document certified an invoice for export of coffee. It also identified the exchange rate between the Venezuelan currency and US dollar. And that was provided because that enabled the US Customs to determine the value in US dollars to impose customs duty. Again, there was no fee charge in 1843. This is probably one of the earliest one where the service fee was charged in 1868. There's a nice red paper consular seal on the lower left. It was done in Sheffield, England by Consul George Abbott. This particular service related to authenticating the invoice and the manufacture of rail scrap shipments to Philadelphia. And sure enough, this time by 1868, they were authorized to charge $2.50 invoice fee collected in cash, which was equivalent to 10 shillings for those who have an interest in Great Britain history. Now we got to see some of the stamps issued, and surprisingly, well, what I'm showing you is a large die proof of a $20 consular fee stamp issued. It was the die proof was approved on September 1252, a month before it was issued. And this is the only known large die proof, either in private hands, my hands, or in the Bureau of Engraving. I have visited their archives many years ago, and they had none. So it is a unique and one of my favorite items in this collection. Now we are showing the die proof you saw, the $20 stamp actually used on a consular visa document. Interestingly, it has to do with Mexico. The $20 was the highest denomination consular revenue stamp issued for visa services. And this had to do with issuing immigrant's visa to a Mexican citizen. And there were two sets of fees. One was a blank consular service fee to do anything for $5. This was done in 1954 in Mexico City by Vice Consul Cash. And it was issued to the young gentleman whose picture is on the lower left next to the stamp. And it was a non-quota O1 immigrant's visa. and he did enter United States on 27th of August 1954, pretty quickly, 11 days after it was issued, at Port Nogales in Arizona. There are only two known documents using the $20 consular stamp, so it's fairly difficult or scarce. The other thing that happened is the creation and the use of bisect stamps. One of the most common fee was $2.50 for a wide range of services, including the export invoice certification. And in some cases, in this case in Switzerland, they ran out of the $2.50 consular stamp. And as an emergency measure, they decided to bisect the $5 stamp. They are listed in Scott catalog. What is unique about this is that we see a pair of documents showing the lower bisect and upper bisect. Lower bisect is on the left document, upper bisect is on the right document. And so it's a matching pair. So that's fairly, attractive to show together. It was done in 1928 in Bern, Switzerland. We are also showing the largest multiple used on a document, and it's a $10 in other denomination. I think $2.50, $5, and $10. The service fee was collected in 1932 by U.S. Consul General in London in the amount of $657.50. That's a huge compared to the amount of fee for individual services like 25 cents, 50 cents, $2.50, and so forth. There is information available on the tariff schedule. This is a service number 39, and that fee was prescribed as a $10 for the first 100 words, and then 50 cents for each additional 100 words. So this deposition of testimonial involved 22,950 words. Must be a big legal document. So it has 64 $10 denomination stamp, one $5 and one $2.50. Scott catalog value is over $11,000 for these stamps alone. I'm showing you the next document, which uses multiple different denominations in large multiples. And this was done around 1925-26 from U.S. Consul in Barbados. It bore 19 stamps for 25 cents in blocks, 20 copies of 50 cent, 23 copies of dollar, totaling a total fee of $36.25. Because of the large number of stamps, they were simply canceled with a canceled hand stamp with a red consular seal. Again, the total catalog value is over $7,000 for these stamps. And it basically reflected a document that was testimony involving 14,400 words. So these two are the largest consular service fee bearing documents that we have seen. So I'm showing you some examples of varieties or variations of the fees. One of the most difficult one is to actually find these consular stamps with plate number or Bureau of Engraving inscriptions, which you see on the top set of stamps. These stamps, and then some fancy cancels, another different bisect, and multiples of the first issue. The one I want to pay attention or draw your attention is the lower left stamp, RK21. And there's a staple hole on the margin on the left. The significance of that is that in my research with the archival records of Bureau of Engraving and Printing, they specified that these sheets of stamps were made into large booklets. I mean, they were booklets of the size of a letter page, so maybe as many as 100 stamps per booklet page, and they were stapled into a booklet. Even though, so this is the first proof we have seen which confirms that these stamps were issued by Bureau of Engraving in large booklets and to Department of State, and then they were shipped to the U.S. consuls worldwide. Now we're gonna get to the type of services. So what we're showing is two passports. No, it's one passport in 1907. It was Consul General of West Coast in London basically confirmed and verified the U.S. passport bearer was the person it was, and he charged $1 consular fee for that service. The image on the right shows the consular stamp tied to the passport document. You notice in those days they did not necessarily have the photograph on the passport. So this was a way to verify that the bearer of the passport is one who says it is. Now we see some U.S. consuls were also authorized to issue passports to U.S. citizens. And this is an example of a passport issued in 1928 by U.S. consulate in Paris. The fee they charged was $9, as you can see on the passport page on the left side. The passport was issued to this woman, Gloria Powers, who actually was in Europe. She was in Switzerland, but she needed the U.S. passport to travel to Amsterdam to attend the 1928 Olympic Games. And her passport page has a nice little special Olympic stamp she affixed to prove that she was there. This is one of my personal favorites to show how consuls facilitated issuing passport to foreign citizens who lost or expired their passports. The next category is the issuing U.S. visas for foreigners. I think one of the members said he was born and grew up in Norway, but this particular visa was issued in Sweden for a mother and daughter, and they charged $5 consular fee on the left side, and that shows both the passport page with the photograph of the mother and daughter, and then the page that shows the issuance of visa for them to come to the United States in 1920. The one on the right is a very interesting use. U.S. consul in Cork, Ireland during World War II was requested to issue a passport, a visa to come to U.S., but that was a stateless person called Nora Peterson. Don't know how she became stateless, but as a compassion, the council reduced the fee by $2 from $10 to $8. But they used some, even though this was 1921, they had some leftover first 25-cent stamp issued in 1904. So it's a pretty late use of that issue, and it's quite valuable. But that's an interesting service for stateless people that came to U.S. These are the export invoices that I had mentioned. So the one on the left is from a consular agent. The consular agents were not necessarily American citizens, but in some remote locations, U.S. consuls would recruit local citizens to act as an agent for the United States. So this was from an agent in Kalamata, Greece, in 22, and he basically was certifying export of currants from Kalamata that were grown there and packed and certified as such to be shipped to Philadelphia. The one on the right is uh, lengthy legal deposition document from U.S. Consul in Milan, and apparently it requires $64 worth of stamps to cover $3,900 words of deposition document. Pretty attractive on the right. So, as I mentioned, there were legal services provided, but one of the unique services that was provided is the U.S. consuls in Seoul, Korea, and in Shanghai, China, were specifically authorized to convene and act as U.S. courts by Department of Justice in an agreement with Department of State. So here we see a 1910 document of a judicial settlement signed by Consul General Orzo. It had to do with a resolution of legal dispute between the Methodist Episcopal Church of Korea and its treasurer, Mr. Dizer Bunker. Don't know what the dispute was, but if I had to speculate, Mr. Dizer may have embezzled some funds or took some money that he was not supposed to. This is a pretty rare document because there are very, very few documents that have survived the consular court's judicial services overseas. The one on the right, they also were allowed to authorize validation of signatures of foreign officials. So this one is a 1932 U.S. Consul Washington in Havana certified that the attached document had the signature of the Assistant Secretary of State of Cuba, and the fee was only $2 for that purpose. Public health and ships and foreign ports. This is actually an important service that U.S. consuls still provide. But in 1893, Congress passed an act to create sanitary health services. It was entrusted to U.S. Marine Hospital Service staff, and then it was subsequently amended and made it as a 1924 Pan American Secure Sanitary Code. Basically, directed U.S. consular staff to work with U.S. Marine Hospital surgeons assigned to the ports to verify that the ships sailing from there to U.S. were free of any diseases. So what we are showing is a full document in 1932 signed by Consular in Jamaica, and it had to do with a ship Darien who was going to sail for Philadelphia, and they charged $5 for that. And it basically provides details of ships, what are the ports of calls made in the last 4 months, and that the ship was fumigated with cyanide, and reports use of red guards for gangway to the ships to prevent any entry of the rats. So second page provides various diseases reported in and near Kingston, Jamaica. This is the only complete record I have seen, at least in private hands. These documents were then mailed in an envelope, such as the one. These are not the same, but the envelope we show is also from U.S. Consul in Kingston in 1916. So it was sent to the Secretary of Treasury, which administered the U.S. Marine Hospital Service staff. And so that's an interesting matching combination. We are now going to talk about the things that are done for life events, marriages, wills, and deaths. The one on the left is a document signed by U.S. Vice Consul Riviera at Spigo. It basically certifies a marriage, Spanish marriage certificate for a $2 fee, but that document was originally certified by Spanish authorities, courts, by using their Spend is 5.5% of steps and some more steps on the left. The one on the center is 1907 U.S. Consul Farragut in London notarized the probate of last will and testament for $2. And you look at how elaborate and fancy the document is. If those of you like engravings, like Mark may like it. The one on the right is a document from 1935 by Consul General Pilcher in Shanghai. He was certifying shipment of the cremated ashes of wife of Mr. Brenneman, and also some personal jewelry and other belongings being taken by her husband, taking it on ship going back to Los Angeles with a service fee of only $2. So these are more life event certifications that U.S. consuls do provide. We're just showing some examples of combinations of uh, use of U.S. consular stamps and services with that of the foreign countries. The one on our left is a 1909 U.S. passport, where Turkish consul general issued a visa uh, charging 20 piastre, that revenue stamp. And then on 15th November 1909, U.S. Consul Light at Constantinople, Turkey, endorsed the passport for further travel. One on the left is a fairly complicated multinational certification notary for an insurance company based out of Europe that had agents all over Asian countries. Uh, so it bears uh, the British one penny stamp used as a revenue stamp. Similarly, there's a revenue stamp of Netherlands because those are the two countries from which this document originated. And then you see consular seals of consuls of Siam, Netherlands, London, etc. That is a multi-page document. So it certainly makes it an attractive looking document. Anyway, I think this is the most comprehensive overview of the consular services and the use of its stamps. These are all from my personal collections, and I'll mention one thing. Because of the size of the documents, it's really difficult to create an exhibit. In fact, what I figured out is that if I want to show this as an exhibit, like at the RMP, our Rocky Mountain show, I have to do the layout where each page would be large enough to accommodate the documents, and then I can only do 4 pages per frame. So typically, each frame we use 16 letter-sized documents or pages. But if I want to exhibit this presentation, I have to have big pages that would mean 4 pages per frame. So that's one of the challenges. Anyway, uh, I think we just pretty much covered all the things that we've been talking about. That, and I really did benefit from having done research of the archives of the Bureau of Engraving that I had the privilege of visiting for a day almost 25 years ago through another stamp collector friend who was on the staff at the Bureau of Engraving Archives. Thank you very much for your interest in sharing, listening, and open to questions.
Robbie, this is Steve Schweigoff. Okay, one of the slides you showed was for a translation service, and if I read it right, it looked like it was $1 for 100 words and then 50 cents for each additional word. Was that?
Yeah, it was. We can go. Is that the one from London or Barbados? Now, this one, so you're right. So by 1917, the fee, this was for deposition, and I assume it involved translation. So there was $10 for the first 500 words, but then they charge 50 cents for each word.
They're expensive.
They were very expensive. But the more amazing, show the one, Gary, that has $657 worth of, it's in the very beginning. That's also interesting. So you see, this one shows also the same thing. The fees rate for either translation or validating legal deposition was we had to retype, I think, the legal deposition on the consular pages. But it was $10 for the first 100 words, and then 50 cents for each additional 100 words, and that was then changed later. What we saw. So you're right. I mean, these were the most expensive services that U.S. councils provided, but they are fairly uncommon. Thank you for your interest.
Ravi, I have a question for you. I'm always fascinated learning about new collection areas.
Yeah.
How big is this field? Like, where do you have a club for this type of collection area? How often do these type of documents show up on auctions?
Yeah.
Etc.
Thanks for your question, and I'm delighted that you are interested in looking at new areas. That's very encouraging. So first of all, there is a National Society. I think most of you know American Revenue Association, ARA. That probably is the primary organization that promotes and has a lot of their periodicals and websites and all that. Pretty active. So that would be one major organization. In terms of finding these documents, typically there are dealers in the US and some abroad that all specialize in revenue stamps and documents, all kinds. If you look at your Scott Specialized Catalog, that have like 15 or 20 pages of different type of revenue stamps issued by the United States. The U.S. Consular revenue stamp issued are only 40 or 50 stamps, and they fit into one half page on the Scott Specialized Catalog. Just as a point of reference, this what I'm showing, I have been collecting for about 35, 40 years. And the piece that you're seeing now on the screen actually came from a major collection, but 25, 30 years ago that was sold by Robert Siegel Auction Galleries. And because it was a specialized collection of all revenue stamps and documents, it's always great if you can find a collector who is disposing his collection of stamps and documents. If you just want to collect stamps, it's relatively easy to do. Some stamps are expensive, but it's very affordable if you just want to collect stamps. If you want to collect documents, it's a different story. But the good thing is you're very young. You have lots of decades to collect if you decide.
Not that young, but thank you. Thanks for the answers. Appreciate it.
Sure. Well, I really appreciate the interest.
Thank you, Ravi.
You're welcome.